Welcome to Seeking Numina, the Sacred Places podcast. I'm your host, Elise Wells, and today I am joined by Jane Matthews. Jane Matthews is a director of World Divination and teaches students around the world the art of divination using runes, Ogham, tarot, mediumship, and natural magic. Jane is also an award-winning reader of Elder Futhark runes, as well as the modalities mentioned. Jane has also been a published author with Red Feather. Sigils, a tool for manifesting and empowerment, was released in May 2023. And today we're going to be talking about Ogham, Divining in the Celtic Way, published by Wiser Books and available for pre-order now. This will be out actually, I think this deck will be out finally once this episode comes out. And you can learn more about Jane at World Divination in their various groups online, worlddivination.com, janematthewsmedium.com, and on Instagram and Facebook as @JaneMatthewsMedium. And you'll see all these links in the show notes. Welcome to Seeking Numina. I'm your host, Elise Wells, and I invite you to connect with the sacred wild within and around you through Numina, or sacred sites around the world, and the wisdom they hold. Together, let's remember the old ways, build relationships with land spirits, and dare to reach out to the fairies. The sacred wild is inviting you to dance in the moonlight. Will you answer their call? Jane, thank you so much for being here to talk about the Ogham.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to talk about more than that because the Ogham is more than that. And the way it is, in essence, an expression of the landscape. And so working with sacred places, as our listeners like to do, are going to learn a lot about trees here today. So
Yes.
would you mind starting with what is the Ogham for those who don't know? And for those who don't know, it is spelled Ogham. So that thing you thought was Ogham is Ogham, and that is what we are talking about today.
Yes, it's and I will speak a bit slower because my accent's very broad and thick, so I'll be clear for you. Ogham is the earliest Irish alphabet, and you're talking about an alphabet that was created around 400, yeah, 400, 4th century. It's something that's actually adapted over times. And when you think about the English language, we've had Middle English and the transitions of our languages of all around the world throughout the years. The Irish language, the Irish alphabet, and language has actually fundamentally done the same that way. And this Ogham is its earliest form.
So powerful. Do we know anything about if it evolved from a different written script, or is it something that we think the Irish came up with on their own?
Well, I do believe that it's its own alphabet in itself. So although a lot of people get Ogham and runes confused because they think Ogham is runes, but they're actually two separate alphabets. And the way I look at different systems in general is they all sing a different song. If you think about around the world and the different places, everyone sounds different. You pronounce words different. They've got their own little flow with things, and so Ogham has its own very distinct kind of dialect and the ways in which it actually expresses. And they're really rather profound because it actually, Ogham as a divination system actually views the world slightly differently from a lot of systems that are out there. They actually look at it from the place of you are the center of your own universe. And that's very kind of, I feel like I'm really egotistical when I say I'm the center of my universe. But I actually am because nobody else is going to experience the universe through my eyes like I am. And
Yeah.
each one of us is like that. So,
Well, and
oh,
so many times people will, like, I don't know if you've seen this online, but there's this like joke about main character syndrome. Like, oh, she thinks she's the main character. I'm sorry, who is the main character in your life if it's not yourself?
exactly that. And it actually guides you as well. So it's really kind of, it's really quite profound because what it does is from that point when you kind of understand you're the center of your universe, it's about fundamentally understanding you first. So it really takes you on quite a profound journey into yourself because you're understanding you. You're understanding why you are the way you are, what things still are relevant to you or not. And when you're thinking about spiritual journeys, we're always kind of like growing and what are we shedding, what are we releasing, what are we moving into, what are we welcoming in. Well, Om in itself is them cycles that invites you to kind of look at those in a really profound way and then kind of promises you that once you've done that, and it's only by doing that can you then begin to really understand everything else that's around you. So it's magic.
And the Ogham is very tied to trees. In fact, each of them is a tree.
Yes.
Could you share a bit with us about that?
So the trees came after the actual alphabet, but the trees are a heavy association. And when you're thinking about Ireland, I'm not sure if many people have actually been over here, but the land itself, the island of Ireland, is actually something that's really kind of beautiful. It's got an energy within its own. It actually, you can feel it under your feet. It kind of hums. And all of the trees, they all have a kind of a different quality, but a different access point as well. So, for example, with OM, the one strokes on the actual alphabet pertain to like the underworld. The path to the underworld are the two strokes. The three strokes is this world. And in this world is where we access everything, all of the inspiration drawn upon putting in all them seeds to grow and everything like that. And then you've got the path to the other world, and then the other world of finally the fifth stroke. So they're all lines, and they all have a significance. And with regards to likes of the trees, if you were to be looking at the oak tree, that mighty oak, and that steward, and that's kind of having that courage, standing there. And it doesn't matter if you're in the face of adversity, it doesn't matter if you're coming up against some opposition. You kind of stand true, you standing solid, you know your truth and the reasons for, and you're prepared to kind of deal with the consequences of that. Very much similar to the aspects of oak and the environment that they grow in and the strength, and how they actually, build up what they actually bring. So each tree, has its own essence with it. You think about another example would be Gorret. Now, Gorret is associated with ivy. Now, Gorret is about, you know, transformation, but it's about elevating yourself from one state of being into a different one that's improved and higher. Well, if you think about ivy in the way that it actually, blends in, but it creeps up and it moves around and it stretches, so it does elevate itself. It gives that improvement. So you have those visual aspects with the trees to kind of guide you within them journeys too.
I had a journey at the end of 2024. I was back in the US for an extended period for the first time in about 5 years. And I could tell there was a new direction I was being pulled, and I didn't know what that was. And so I was hiking a lot. And this was November, so the trees didn't have very many leaves left, but it I was able to really feel certain trees pulling me. And it was birch. Birch came to work with me. So I started researching this because it was consistent. I would go on this hike and I would go on different hikes and I would meet the birch tree every time. And I look it up and it's new beginnings. And
Yes.
so I worked with Beth, with Birch, for about 6 months to understand what that meant. And Birch was that initiator of new beginnings. And that was something I thought of is why? Why is Birch new beginnings? Well, I thought, well, it peels away the bark and reveals the new life.
Yes. It doesn't, the associations are so closely linked. They really are. When you think about, my favorite few out of the whole OM alphabet is Uaf. And I have mentioned that in the book, and that is the hawthorn tree. And it's misfortune, it's not nice. But when you think about a hawthorn tree, it is kind of prickly. You don't want to get too close to it, it'll start jabbing you. It's got big, sharp thorns, but those thorns, they are a protector, and birds and things feed off the berries that can nest within the hawthorn bushes. So it actually looks after as well as protects. So it's kind of, if I was to go and stick my arm in an hawthorn bush and I was to get thorns in me, yeah, is that my fault? That's where that's where you look at, have I been too rough? Have I been whatever? So you kind of understanding what you bring on yourself with that aspect too. It's got the qualities. What I love about Ogham and all the trees is that they have that duality within them. There's the connotations of all, so that you're seeing it as a full rounded picture, and you'll be able to really navigate that.
That makes me think too how, thinking of what you said in the beginning, that it might make people feel egotistical or self-centered to think of themselves as the center of their universe. But when we do that, it also doesn't allow us to hide from the shadows. It's
Ex
duality right there. So we can't just see
exactly.
ourselves as a high and mighty. Instead actually asks us to reflect deeply,
It
and
really
take
does.
responsibility as well.
And that's an important part. And I think that's an important part of life, spirituality, or anything, is that being responsible and being accountable, holding yourself accountable even when others don't. We are responsible for our own selves and what we do, what we say, how we do things. So, we want to always be try and be the best person we can be. But we have to acknowledge as well at the same time that we are human and like things do come across. I'm a sweary monster sometimes. I get a little frustrated. That I can own, if you want to call it like darkness or shadow side. I'm quite happy to take mine out to play with on the park. I'll push it on swings. It's part of me. I can't, you know, as much as you don't want to acknowledge, I can't not. So you've got to kind of, I'm an Aries, I'm very impatient. I can be quite intolerant. But those things, as well as being bad, they can actually be good because you can use them to actually motivate you. So it's how you apply those things as well and turning them into positives. But it does take a lot of work and it does require you to be really honest. But if you can't be honest with yourself, then you can't be honest with anybody in the world, really, can you? Because
Yeah.
you're hiding you to you even. And that's kind of a big disconnect, I think, when it comes to spiritual paths and spiritual journeys.
Yeah. And divination also, I think a lot of people find divination hardest to do for themselves. And I think that's why. But I like the OM because, and I haven't had extensive opportunities to read with them. I had like an app for a while that was like you could shuffle the OM and learn. So that was how I just wanted to get to know the OM. But I never could really feel like that was the most authentic way to read with these things. But one of my coven members reads with the OM. And so she shared a lot about her knowledge with them. And they will call you out. And I've
Yes.
noticed that with Irish deities in general. I have the Call of the Morgan Oracle deck, which was made by, I'm going to probably miss somebody's name here, Stephanie Woodfield. Naomi Cornick did the art, and there was one other artist whose name escapes me who wrote the book. But it's the same way. That deck it reminds me so much of the Om. It will just call you out and point it in your face, and it's very hard to deny what it's trying to guide you to. And I love that about Ireland as well. The whole land does that. It will open you up in the best ways and the most shadow work ways.
It is. It just kind of it cracks you wide open, and it's shock and awe really, and in the most beautiful of ways. And once you kind of start down that route, things are never the same again. Everything shifts. Even your perception of everything in the world shifts, and you see the magic everywhere. And it's something, it is life changing. It is quite profound. I think. I kind of look at home as sitting on your granddad's knee, and they'll express a disappointment, and
Mm.
like you haven't done great with that, but what you should be doing, like be doing it. Some systems I think really are a bit and can call you out in ways that you're like, I don't want to touch that deck ever again. Like, but I think with Orm, it's kind of in the way it calls you out, but it does so in such a way that you're like, yeah, but I want to know more, and you want to work more, and you want to kind of, ingrain more and interact more with everything around you.
Yeah. Speaking of that, could you share a little bit about, I know you write more about this in the book that comes with the deck, but your garden and your experience literally with the trees of the Om.
Yeah, so I've got an aspen. No, I've got an elder tree. Sorry, I've got seven hawthorn trees lining at the back, and they were covered in ivy. And it wasn't until we
Oh.
actually stripped back all the ivy, that actually all of the hawthorn trees actually started thriving after that. They really are old and there must be about at least 100 to 150 years old, each one of those trees. We have different apple trees. Um, we've got holly growing in. We've got sycamore. We've got all the trees. And actually, what the magnificent thing of it, Ian, we've got fir. There's a big lane down at the side of our house. It's all fields. It's beautiful, and there's all these old, big old trees. And when you look down the lane, it's like looking into a portal. Sometimes the sun shines, and it's all misty, and it's like you see the magic. You can't deny it. You see it. You feel it. You can actually like touch your hands around, and you can see the ways in which everything kind of springs to life. And it's not only from like the trees and their energy, but it welcomes in everything else around, like the birds, the wildlife. We've had foxes, the crows. The crows actually leave golf balls and different things because I give them peanuts all the time and walnuts, and I get dropped little presents from them. And they actually, you can hear them that literally tell you messages. But when you're sat in round the trees and you're wanting to ask a question of spirit or of the Ogham, you can literally, you'll feel the wind shift and you'll hear the branches shake and the leaves, and the messages really just come. You just know they're just in you, and it's something that's, it's immense.
Yeah. I think it's the holistic experience of nature as well that people miss in these moments. It's not like I think we can be waiting for the acknowledgement, but recognizing it's already there and we're coming to meet it rather
Yes,
than, and this is one way that it isn't necessarily about us in the good way, that when we understand that we're part of this collective, that we are a oneness with nature, that's when it speaks through us. And it can call us out and it feels loving because we realize it's the same love that I love that analogy of granddad's knee. I feel that way with the river that I live near when I'm in the US. I feel like she's grandmother and she always has the wisdom and encouragement and won't be afraid to say, but remember this was why that, I mean, then maybe we'll do that instead.
yes. And grandmas can be quite fierce as well, can't they? As much as they have got that fierceness about them when something's,
The
and
matriarch.
yes. So you think about how a river can actually shift its currents. I mean, I think there's the power that's within water, and the strength and the unpredictability of it is something that demands a lot of respect. And I think that suits that grandmother kind of status that you gave it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, would you tell us about your neighbor's lovely
Yes. Like where I live in the north of Ireland, so I live in Northern Ireland, and everybody, if ever anybody comes over, everybody's got a story. They all have, and they have a real belief in the folklore. They've got a real belief in fairies, leprechauns, all those kind of things. One of my neighbours actually has a fairy mound. Now, a fairy mound is something that's really sacred. It's usually got a hawthorn tree or something in there, but they are like sacred mounds where the fairies live. Now, you don't cross into them grounds without asking permission. You've got to have permission for that. And they don't like being tread over. So if you just go and walk across, it's that kind of elemental energy where they look at things just kind of tit for tat, like it, but in a their way of what you've done, they'll do back. So if you go and trancing over their mound, well, then you know that there's going to be some shortfalls coming to you, whatever that be. Um, there was I've had a guy that was actually doing some carpentry work telling me about there was ploughing the fields. This lady said to this guy, there's you can't cut down that. They were ploughing them down, but they couldn't get through, so they needed to cut this tree, and it was a hawthorn. She said, "Don't be do that. Somebody will be dead by morning." Ended up cut through it, dropped down of a heart attack. Somebody else had kind of was shooting and shot into a hawthorn tree by accident. And when years later, when they went to cut through the tree, they hit the bullet, and the bullet shot back out and killed them. And my actual, yeah, yes, like it's wild. So there's such reverence. You don't cut them down. You don't damage them. They're sacred because they are the portals to the underworld, and that's the where the fae are, and they are very fierce and they protect all wildlife and everything around. So to have seven in the garden is really special, because you can see it and you can watch and see the grass actually move, and you can see like parting, like flatten, and there's nothing there, and it's like walking up. So you can actually you see things. But yes, my neighbours son was told many, many times, don't go and play in the mound, don't go playing in that fairy mound if you're going out. There really are banshees as well. There's a lot of people hear banshees. And one of my neighbours actually heard a banshee when he was a young boy, and he hid under the bed with his sister all night as this banshee screamed. He says it chilled him to the bone. He'll never forget it. And I mean, this gentleman's now in his 70s. He says he can never get that noise out of his head. Once you've heard it, he'll never forget. And the next morning, they found out a neighbour had passed. So, you know,
Ooh.
he's not the only
Gives
one
me,
that's heard.
yeah, gives me
Yes.
full body chills because one of the questions I get off the most often is it safe to work with fairies? Are they dangerous? And this illustrates how, it's kind of a F around and find out thing with fairies. Like they warn you. They're not going to antagonize out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think it's just kind of having that reverence and understanding that although you might not think something's a big deal, they very much will.
Yeah.
We've got fairy doors all over. I've got one on that wall. I've got one down at the door behind me here. One on the front. So it's kind of like letting them in if they want, they can come in and out. But we do have kind of rules. So they'll actually say, if there's something that they don't like, then we'll change it. We'll come to an agreement, shall we say, because things actually start breaking. And what I mean by that is I've got a Yorkie poo dog, and she picked up the fairy dawn alive and started chewing on it right behind me. And within 5 minutes, the whole internet was just gone, gone.
Oh my gosh.
So, that's literally the way in which they deal with that. It's, some could say that it comes with a bit of a twist. So just be careful. But again, it's a relationship. It's like people. There's all different kinds of people in this world. And, I honestly believe that the fairies are the most, beautifulest of spirits. They're very childlike and they're very, buzzy in that way. But at the same time, they don't tolerate crap either. And nor should they.
Yeah. Yeah. And they teach us to do the same. I mean, that's the beauty of it. And I think it's interesting too to think of the fairies in different countries and different lands. In Ireland, I agree. That is 100% how they feel. I've never lived in Ireland, but I've had the pleasure to visit a few times, and every time I do, I have a deeper appreciation for the reverence that the land demands. And in Greece, I spend a lot of my time on the mainland. It's like the best kept secret that the islands are middling, but the mainland is where it's at in Greece,
Wow.
particularly for our spiritual selves. I think if you're a beach goer, you might argue on that, but definitely if you're there to meet land spirits and fae and nymphs, as we call them, that's where they're at on the mainland. But Crete is a massive island. It's such a big island that you never would think you're on an island when you're there. And the fairies there um, are so playful. Like they're protective of where they are, but there's also not that many people around. So they don't have, I think in Ireland there's always been a connection to humanity and the fairies. In Crete, particularly, I named Crete here because I have a story about this one. But everywhere I went there, even places that felt completely different, you could drive 20 minutes, just 20 minutes in your car, and find yourself in a different temperate zone with different trees, different animals, completely different as you descend and ascend these mountains. And the Fae there have been left to their own devices for so long that they're actually thrilled. At least when I was there recently, back in June, with a friend of mine. And so we're both very spiritually in tune, and she works with these spirits. So that also might have affected it. I'm sure if you went with less loving people or more closed people, maybe it would be a different experience. But everywhere we went, they were rising to meet us. They were like, "Oh, you're here, come play." And they would try and have us play their games. And it was sometimes we could, other times we couldn't. One time we were at a cliff's edge and they were literally trying to get us to jump off and back on with them. I was like, that's not, I'm so sorry. We're gonna stay here. And they're like, you're lost. Like you could feel this,
Yes.
like, if only you could, like, just
It's a
so
real
childlike.
excitability, isn't it? And it gets you really that way. It's like it's magnetic, it's infectious, it's dizzying
Yes.
almost, it's
Yeah.
giddy, and it's so pure. There's no, you know, there's no malice. It's just that's just them, and I think that's the beauty of them. It's something that's kind of I've never thought about them being different in all the different places, but yes, that kind of makes sense. Uh, I think that's something that I'm going to actually have to keep a lookout for, and when I go to different places, actually really try and see the connect and see the differences.
Yeah. Like in the UK, like in England, like I was in Avebury again not too long ago. Maybe it was September 2024, I think. And the Fey spirits, I almost hesitate to use that word because they were so calm. They were so calm. They were almost not coming out. But Avebury is a place where you can really receive a lot. Um, but it almost feels like you're in a portal. It's like they're not necessarily like coming out. That's the best way to say it. But you feel their energy. It's like they've blessed the space for you, and you're welcome to wander there. But they're not necessarily going to join you. It's a very interesting thing. So yeah, I would love email me with your thoughts if you go somewhere and you're
Oh
like, oh, I felt
yeah,
them, but they were different.
there's even in Ireland in the forest now. There's certain forests. There's talks of when people get disorientated, and that's the fairies playing fun. They'll disappear. You don't go to sleep in a fairy circle, for example. But if you actually find yourself disorientating no matter what, you can't get out of the woods, you have to take your top off, put it on inside out, spin your cell around, and then you kind of break yourself out of that and can find your way out. That's one of the ways of handling that. They're the kind of fun that they kind of play in the forests and things here. But I grew up in Cumbria, the Lake District in England, so it's a big mountain region. And again, the spirits were similar there but different at the same time. But there was a lot of, I would say, if I was going to call it anything, it would be like heavier energy, but it's like mountains, it's like troll, it's like giants, is what kind of
Yes.
feels like. And because a lot of it's kind of similar to over here where it's untouched, you kind of really feel it in a different way to places that's maybe, a lot more built up or I don't know what other way to put it, popular, so to speak, although the lakes are very popular for people to visit. But I think when they are left to their own devices, they don't sometimes it's like they're very excited to interact, but other times like, well, what you want to do? Everybody else is ignoring kind of thing. They get a bit pushy at times. Um,
Yeah.
I
And
think it's just
defensive.
yes, because they think you're going to take something or you're wanting something necessarily, and so it's kind of like it's nice just to kind of go in and introduce and have your intentions pure, you know. If you try and make deals, it'll come with a bit of a side, so there'll be a condition on it, so be careful with that one.
Oh, so true. When you said about Cumbria and feeling these giants, these like big energies. So in my book, Sacred Wild, I came up with like a glossary of terms to kind of help people dissect or disseminate anyway what they feel sometimes because it's such a collective. It's hard to really narrow it down. And with mountain ranges, rivers, I call them elders because they're the land itself that has
Mm.
witnessed the most. And in a way, they are havens for the Fae. They're
Yeah,
places that contain.
yeah. That I think it's kind of I don't know. For me, when I look at things, spirit is everywhere, it's everywhere and everything. There's not a bit of this earth, not a centimetre that's not had some kind of spirit on it at some point, and all of its energy. So there is, wherever you go, there's all of that. And then you kind of factor in ley lines and all the other woundness that you can possibly pour in. And it's like the planet is fortune with spirit and energy for us to connect to at any time. So I love the fact that you can actually you feel elemental energy very, very strongly in very different parts of your body depending on what spirit it is as well. I think when we say about the mountain spirit, as you call it, the elders, they feel very strong. They are very solid and they're very kind of rigid in that.
Grounding. They
Yeah,
root you.
you feel like you can kind of, stuck feet are stuck to the ground almost. You're so solid. And if something was to hit you, you wouldn't even fall. It's a very kind of it's different to like earth spirit energy where there's passed over people. It's unless you kind of experience it or open yourself up to inviting in and allowing it to feel every single kind of category of element elementals or spirit in general anyway, even right up to archangels, they all have their own distinct feeling, and how they feel within you is, going to be different. It's about finding our own within ourselves as well, isn't it? And I think that's a lot of people are frightened to connect because in case they're feeling the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Because people are obviously, and rightly so, you've got to have reverence to what kind of spirit you connect to that way, but a lot of fearful of what it feels like in them, and it's not necessarily a bad energy, being that really kind of heaviness of troll energy is really heavy. I find it like really heavy, but it doesn't mean to say it's harmful. It's just, but so I encourage everyone feel whenever you ask different, to come in and allow yourself to feel the different levels because there's scales, isn't there, of everything of what you pick up all around, and I think it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. And for those who are looking to, know if it's the right feeling, or I always say this too, like there are spirits in the universe that are human, not necessarily human centered, but human aware in a different way. Deities, ancestors, particularly spirit guides, archangels for those who work with them. They are connected to us. They like us. They want to see us succeed. And they'll even weigh in on things like marital questions or job questions. But I find that the Fae and land spirits, they aren't going to do that. They're not going to have an opinion on anything like that, but they are going to bring you to grounding. And that
Yes,
grounding is going to often come with release because sometimes to be neutral, there's too much going on. You have to take some things off, which means release those things, cry a lot. Um, do you find that like there's an emotional release a lot of times when working with the spirits of place?
I do. I think for me, I actually, I get emotional when I'm channeling. So what's coming through, or the message of it, or the actual enormity of it. Because I actually, when I really open up and channel, I feel it, my heart chakra. I actually allow my heart to just light the way with that one, and it allows everything else to kind of come in. All of the clairs, everything. I think everything in general with regards to mediumship, it all starts from understanding you, your base levels, what you feel like, understand your energy. And then, you know, we like sitting in this room right now. Well, I feel kind of nervous because I'm talking to you and I've never met you before. So I'm a little bit nervous. So I can feel that a little bit. Other than that, I can hear the rain and I can hear my dog breathing. And this is the baseline for me right now. So I'm settling into that, and then if anything else comes after that, I know that that's not out. That's out with my baseline, and that's something that's coming in then, or shifting be it a different energy as a spirit or something in that sense. So it's kind of, you've got to allow yourself to be open, and you've got to really work on yourself and allow yourself to kind of, purge or shed whatever it is that's kind of sticky patches, I call them, that's blocking you at any time. And we pick them up everywhere, from everything. It's like, I've got a speeding ticket, or I've got this, or something's
Yeah.
blocking the road again. We pick them up
Temptations
everywhere.
to, yeah, I think of those as like the temptations to ruminate. Like I think
Mhm.
ruminating. And that's not deep thinking on an issue. I mean, ruminating. Like, I got this speeding ticket. What the heck? That guy, just the way he rolled his eyes at me. And then like the way we just go over and over.
Yes.
I think that is probably the biggest detractor from our energy
Yeah,
out
and if
there.
we can't, if we're not truly, if we're not open in that way, if we can't actually, let stuff kind of move through, cleanse ourselves, it's spiritual hygiene, really, isn't it? And if we don't actually
Yes.
cleanse ourselves and let things just go pass through, then, if we want to be, to grow, if we want to connect, then you have to do these things to allow that, because otherwise you're going to doubt your intuition. You're going to doubt what you feel. You're going to doubt what's coming in. There's so much, and then that escalates into a whole nother kind of, you know, metamorphosis of self-doubt, self-worth, all them things, and it's kind of spirals you in this repetition. So it's kind of, I check in with myself a few times a day, and if I feel a bit thing, then I'll try and, let it go, because it's only by doing that can you really then be open enough to allow everything to come in, and that the messages that they're wanting you to have, You know, sometimes you hear things, sometimes you're told things that you don't really want to hear. You
Yeah.
know, you need to do this, you need to do that. Focusing on your to-dos or focusing on trying to get things sorted. It's like, well, do it in this way. You can put more blockages in your way by actually just going against that flow. And I think that goes with energy and everything in general, really.
Yeah.
It's working, it's going, understanding that you're in a current, and you can fight it or you can go with it. Sometimes that current's a little bit more rough than other times as we go through life and have our experiences. But it doesn't stop the fact that we're going to be going through that anyway. We're going down that route. So we can either try and go upstream, which is going to be really hard, or we can actually allow ourselves to just be carried. And I think that's when the biggest shifts occur and you get the biggest growth with regards to your spiritual path and actually aligning yourself into things that you actually like. Because you kind of paddling up trying to kick away from what you don't want. Well, you already know what you don't want, but you've got to be open to seeing what you do, what elements are within your spirituality or divination you are drawn to, and allow it to really broaden for you and bring forth. Because spirit always has a plan. It's just we don't always listen or follow it, or we like to think we know better until we
Yeah.
don't.
Or I think too, and maybe this is just me, but I used to just take things so seriously that I would wait or I would take too long on something. I would have my first book I wrote, I had the whole thing written, but I didn't and I even had the proposal written. I had my friends look at it, published authors, but I didn't send it for another 8 weeks because I kept, niggling with it. And I'm like, What am I doing? So since then I've really worked on just put it out there, follow. And I think that's where the surrender to spirit comes in because I know that what I'm doing is so spirit led. It's so much bigger than me. Why would I let this brain keep the thing from happening? And
That's
that's the
it.
shift.
It's self-sabotage almost, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
you know, it's almost to a degree you're frightened, even though you've been told it's going to do well, you're frightened that it's not. And even that, then you're frightened if it does get, then what everybody else is going to think of it. And it's this
Yeah.
state. I've been this the exact way with Ogham and my sigils. It's like you want to do it justice, you want to do yourself, and you want to do everyone, and you put the pressure of all of that onto you, and you kind of give yourself reasons as to maybe it's not right. I need to change that. I need to do this, and you can only be yourself, be true to who you are, be true to what you're actually doing, and you know, I think people are like it, people won't like it, but there's the same with when it comes to anything with divination, isn't it? You like a system or you don't. Some people do, some people don't. Some people like salt, some people like pepper. It's just that's humanness. So now I'm kind of maybe it's my age. I'm just like that goes out the window now, and I'm like, I don't care anymore. I do care, but I don't. I haven't. It's kind of lost my capacity to be like bothering all the time because I've got brain fog and everything, so I don't need that on top. You
Well,
know?
that's the reality is it's the brain. And when we work with nature, it is always trying to get us out of our head. And sometimes people will say, "Oh, I don't have the words to describe it." Exactly. That means it was probably the most profound
Yes.
experience. I find that after I visit a place, especially if I know I'm going to write about it, I know I need to take some notes, but it's always a poem. I can never really just notate or make a journal entry. It comes out as poetry every time. And that's not a mistake, that's how we're meant to relate to the world. And the fairies, the land, the trees, the Om, they invite us to take the brain out of it and let the body and the spirit be guided instead.
It's about, yeah, and kind of seeing that everything's got its own cycle to it. Life itself has its own cycle to it. And all of the steps within our lives, have each has its own cycle, even in nature. You've got the seasons and things. Um, animals. You've got, when farmers, you have lambing season and things, you always have these cycles in everything in life. And it's about kind of understanding those, but in a way where you can actually appreciate as well at the same time. And I think it's looking at it with compassion and kindness, but it's also looking at it with an understanding of things always change. Everything changes. No second is the same, ever. It's from the minute we've been born, no second is ever the same. Time is always moving forward. Therefore, there's always even within our bodies, there's an element of change always occurring within us. So understanding that on the like the really basic level of that is kind of it prepares you to be able to understand the bigger cycles of life and the bigger meaning behind it all and spotting them as well when they're occurring so that you can actually transition into through any change that you've got in a more kind of balanced way rather than swinging on that pendulum. Is it good, is it bad, and it going like that. You don't want to be getting swung around by your pigtails by the universe. You want to be able to see and enjoy it at the same time, and I think that's that you know openness within yourself and understanding that there's everything changes all the time, and it's how we actually work with that.
Jane, thank you so much for being here and for writing Ogham. I'm very
Thank
excited to
you.
read this and to have this deck to use. Can you share with everybody where they can find you and learn more about what you do?
Yes, you can find me on worlddivination.com. I teach a lot of courses on their mediumship as well. I love, as you know, I love everything. I love everything woo and spirit. But we've got over 200 courses on there, so every kind of divination you could think of, if you want to learn it, you can. And I'm on Insta and Facebook at Jane Matthews Medium, and I'm on TikTok too at Jane Matthews Medium. Although that's one that's still in progress. I've just been starting doing that recently. But yeah, you can catch up me on any of those socials, and I'm always about if you want to ask any questions or anything like that.
Thank you so much again. And we'll put all these links in the show notes. And I look forward to having you back if you do another book that you want to promote.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the privilege of speaking with you and your time. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for seeking Numina with me today. Join me at patreon.com/Elise Wells to support this show and get access to a library of rituals, exclusive videos, meditations, and more. To learn more about my upcoming retreats, book a tarot reading, or learn with me in workshops, classes, or mentorship, visit seekingnumina.com.